Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of Musical Musings, airing every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We broadcast this program to you from Rajamakan University of Technology, Peranakan. This program comes to you in two parts. For the first part, I will introduce an artist and a song to you. We will talk a little bit about the artist, and then we will discuss the main themes of the song, what it's all about, as well as a little bit of background about the song as well. Then, we will take a break and listen to the song, and in the second part of our program, we will analyze the lyrics, looking at anything that is difficult to understand, vocabulary, slang, idioms, anything like that. All right, let's get to the show.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Gary Gray, and I am your host for the Musical Musings program. I'm an American English teacher here at Rajamakan University of Technology, Peranakan. I have been teaching here for over 8 years, and I do enjoy incorporating music into our classroom, and so that's why I'm bringing you this musical program. Anyone familiar with our program knows that we usually have video along with this. Unfortunately, for this next week or two, we will be without video. That should return soon. So we are without video this week, and I apologize for that. Of course, if you're watching via YouTube, we will still embed the actual video for the song, but just the video of me presenting our program is missing. All right, so for this week, we are going to be doing the song Imagine by John Lennon. All right, so a bit about John Lennon. He was born in 1940 in England, and he died in 1980 in New York. Unfortunately, he was assassinated in New York. Someone killed him, which was very, very sad and tragic. He's probably best known for being in the Beatles. And last week we actually did an episode where we did a song by the Commodores, which includes their lead singer, who is someone who we have done previously. So this time around, we're kind of going backwards, where we've already done the Beatles, and so now we are doing one of their performers as a solo artist, and that's John Lennon. Okay, but he is probably best known for the Beatles. Now, the Beatles actually formed as a different name, sort of. It was sort of not really the same band. A few of they varied a couple of the band members, but some of them were there since the formation of the Quarrymen in 1956. So that's when most of them first got together, and then it kind of evolved into the Beatles by 1960. So the Beatles as the Beatles formed in 1960, and they were around for about 10 or 11 years, having broken up in 1970. And after that, pretty much all of them went solo. Ringo Starr as the drummer. It's kind of hard for a drummer to go solo. There are some that do it. Phil Collins is a drummer. He also sings, but usually the drummer is not the lead singer of a group. Certainly some drummers do sing. The drummer for Queen sings a lot on their performances, and like I said, Phil Collins is a drummer, and obviously he's a solo performer because it's called Phil Collins. Now, he did come from a band prior to that, the band Genesis. So some drummers can have solo careers, but generally speaking, they don't. So Ringo Starr, who was the drummer of the Beatles, didn't really go on to have much of a solo career. He still certainly did a lot of performances, he was active, but just didn't have really a big solo career. The other three did. George Harrison, Paul McCartney, and John Lennon had pretty decent solo careers. I'd say none of them were as big as they were when they were with the Beatles. And Paul McCartney also wasn't just a solo performer. He also formed another band called Wings that he was with. So it wasn't all just solo performances, and generally they weren't as popular as they were with the Beatles. Probably the most popular of the three of them, which wouldn't be surprising since he was their lead singer, is John Lennon. So after the Beatles broke up in 1970, John Lennon went solo for pretty much the entire rest of his life because he died in 1980, so he was only about 41 years old. I'd have to do the math there, but I believe he died late in the year. I think it was December, so he would have already had his birthday in 1980. So, again, he wasn't that old yet, so his career continued. He was a solo performer until he passed away. He was also a big kind of social activist. He was really pushing the peace agenda. That was really his big social activism. I hesitate a little bit when I talk about it because in some ways, some of these early social activists were not as strongly into certain movements to gain rights for individual groups. They certainly didn't oppose that. But for example, John Lennon was not a big outspoken supporter of like LGBTQ rights, for example. I'm sure he wouldn't have opposed them. I'm sure he was probably in favor of them. But it wasn't his real big cause. His cause was more about peace. All right, and that's kind of what this song is. So we will talk a little bit about the song. So Imagine is kind of a peace song, and it came out in 1971 on an album with the same name. The name of the album was Imagine. It hit number 3 on the Billboard charts in 1971, and it also had a resurgence because it got re-released in the 1980s, in 1981, shortly after his passing. It did not make the charts again in the U.S. that year, but it was still pretty popular. It made the charts in a lot of other countries. It also gained in popularity again in 1988 when they used the whole album, the Imagine album, so it wasn't just this song. But it gained in popularity again in 1988 when they made it into a movie. I have seen that movie many times. I used to, back then in 1988, most people rented movies. You didn't buy them very often. You could buy them, but they were on VCRs because this was before DVDs. And so you'd buy a VHS tape for your VCR. So a lot of people just rented. And I happened to work at a movie store that rented out movies. And so I watched this movie many times, many times. And it's a really good movie about John Lennon and his life. So again, that came out in 1988. And this is a song that I'm kind of surprised I haven't done yet because it's very popular. I think a few of you might even know the song out there. Perhaps not, but it's not as popular here in Thailand as some songs by like John Denver, like Take Me Home Country Roads is very popular here. But I do think at least some of you may have heard this song, Imagine. All right, so let's get on to the song. And again, as I mentioned before, for those of you on YouTube, we still can embed the video. We cannot embed the video due to copyright reasons, but we're still going to give you the video link, even though we have no video with our program today. So you will see the link to that video in the upper right-hand corner. And after the video is over, please just click back to come back here for the second part of our program. And for anyone who is just listening on streaming or radio, you don't even notice that we have no no video here today, and we can embed the music. So you should be able to listen just fine. All right, let's get to the song.
Musical musings, musical musings, musical musings, musical musings.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, so that's Imagine by John Lennon, and it is a song that's basically about peace. All right, so the lyrics for this song are not going to be too tricky. A few words maybe you won't understand. We'll have to explain. But it's a fairly simple song about just having peace among people. So we'll start with the lyrics here. Imagine there's no heaven, it's easy if you try. No hell below us, above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Okay, so what he's talking about here is, I don't know if there's anything difficult here as far as words to understand, but just the concept. In Western culture, Christianity is the main religion, so heaven and hell are very kind of important concepts. And because of that, there's a lot of judging, being judgmental of people. Because, they're going to go to hell, and, they're bad, doing bad things. And, of course, within the Christian religion, it also says you're not supposed to judge, but a lot of people do it anyway. I grew up in that faith. I've seen it. A lot of people do it anyway. So there's a lot of judging that goes on. And so what he's saying is, imagine a world without that. People aren't judging one another. And you're just living for today. So basically, you're just enjoying your life. Because you're not looking forward to the afterlife of heaven or hell. You're just looking at today. And that's probably going to cause you to be kinder. Because, you're just trying to enjoy life. So, and if you do something nice for someone, kind of makes you feel better too. So, you're probably going to be a kinder person if you're just living for today. Okay, we continue on. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. All right. Again, pretty simple. Nothing too difficult to understand there. The only thing I would point out, because within the Thai culture, it may not be as obvious, but when he talks about no religion, you may think, well, what's good about that? Well, because Buddhism is the biggest religion here, it may be hard to, it shouldn't be hard to grasp. I don't want to, that's almost like I'm insulting the Thai audience, like they don't know anything about world history. But for a few of you, it may be hard to understand why there being no religion would bring more peace. Because throughout world history, there have been a lot of historians that have tried to determine what's the biggest cause of wars in the past. And it's tricky to figure out because sometimes there's more than one reason. But most have come to conclude that religion has been the biggest cause of war. And the reason I say that may be a little hard to understand here in Thailand is because Buddhism is probably the most peaceful of the religions. I mean, there certainly have been times where they've been involved in some fighting. We've seen it even recently in Myanmar, in the north of Myanmar, with the Rohingya and versus some of the Buddhist people there. And so they certainly not always devoid of any wars, but generally speaking. Buddhism is one of the more peaceful religions. Some of the other religions in the world actually say in their religious texts that it's good to kill certain people who you are opposed to. Now, most of them also say it's not good to kill, so they're not very consistent in that message. It depends on your interpretation, but they do actually say things like that. So that's where he's coming from here. He's obviously, when he says there, imagine there's no countries. Well, of course, there's border wars all the time. You have Russia that invaded Ukraine. We have this thing between Cambodia and Thailand going on very recently. I'm recording this, if you're listening to this later, in September of 2025. And just over the summer, we had a border skirmish here in Thailand with Cambodia. So that's what he means by imagine there's no countries as well. So you get rid of countries, you get rid of religion, and there will be more peace. Now, would there really be? I don't know. People would still find something to fight over, but maybe. Who knows? That's what he's saying, at least, in the song. Then we get to the chorus. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you will join us, and the world will be as one. Okay, so there are a couple of things here that may be slightly difficult to understand. For example, you may say I'm a dreamer. Dreaming, that's like when you're asleep. So what does that mean? When you dream about something, it also means, it has two meanings. It can mean like in your sleep, but it also means something that you're hoping for that you probably won't ever get. So it's just a dream because you're never going to get it. So that's why I say you may say I'm a dreamer. He's hoping for this, but some people may think it's not realistic. It's never going to happen. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. When he says the world will be as one, he just means united, together, at peace. Okay, now we get to the next verse. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Okay, possessions, those are just things you own. In case you don't know that word, that's just things you own. So he's saying if you don't have anything, there's no greed, no need for greed or hunger. So I guess you have food, but it probably means, but when he says possessions, we don't usually think of food as a possession. So he's probably thinking of more like a communal society where everyone shares everything, which is, of course, again, a little bit unrealistic. That's why people will say he's a dreamer, but it's kind of what we're thinking here. A brotherhood of man. So a brotherhood of man. Brotherhood means like caring about each other. Caring about each other. Caring for each other. So again, everyone's taking care of one another. You don't need possessions. There's no greed. There's no hunger. Everyone's taking care of one another. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. So again, everyone's helping one another. Okay, then we just do the chorus again. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. He does change that last line. The first chorus, it says the world will be as one. Second chorus, it says the world will live as one. It's kind of the same thing, except maybe using the word live. It's an active verb. Verbs are action words, and the word be is what we call a stative verb. So he's talking about a brotherhood of man, everyone sharing the whole world. So I think he changed the word there on purpose. I think he's using the word live there to show the actions, the active living as one, helping each other out. So that's what he's hoping for. Okay, so he does change that one word, but I think it's meaningful. I think he did that on purpose. I think he's trying to look for people to take action to help the world live as one, to help bring about peace. All right, so that is Imagine by John Lennon. Seems like our show was a little bit short this week. Actually, it's supposed to be this short every week. I just talk too much. All right, so that is Imagine by John Lennon. I usually do like to point out other songs by an artist that you should take a look at. So for John Lennon, I'm going to focus this only on his songs from his solo career. Because he was with the Beatles for so long. They did a lot of songs. He was one of their main writers, although Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Ringo Starr, they all took part in the writing. But John Lennon was one of their more prolific writers, so I'm not going to mention any of those songs. We're just going to talk about songs that were part of John Lennon's solo performance. Okay, so I'm going to give you about 4 or 5 songs here. Give Peace a Chance, Happy Christmas, Instant Karma, Starting Over, and Beautiful Boy. Now, I can tell you personally, the ones that I consider my favorites are not the ones that most people consider their favorites. Okay, most people do consider Imagine probably their favorite by him, and it probably is mine as well, so that one's fine. But a lot of people love the song Happy Christmas. I actually cannot stand that song. I hate it. But I'm going to mention it to you because a lot of people like it. My opinion is not all that matters. Lots of other people like it. So, again, that was Give Peace a Chance, Happy Christmas, Instant Karma, Starting Over, and Beautiful Boy. My favorite song is Beautiful Boy. It's about his son, so it's a very cute, pleasant, nice song. All right. So, again, that's Imagine by John Lennon. And that's going to do it for us today. So, thank you for joining us for today's Musical Musings program. Any young people out there listening, I would encourage you, if you're planning on going to university in the future, to look into our university, Ratchamakhan University of Technology, Peranakan. It is a pretty good university here in Bangkok. So, think about us when you're considering your options. All right, please stay with us and tune back in next week for another great song. And please don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Thank you.
Musical musings, musical